Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 100 Pictures of Honey, our last reading of the year 2025. So thank you so much for being here. And, there's that old saying that you save the best for last. And I don't know if best, but certainly like loaded is the way I would describe this reading. So much talent in this room and so many different styles. And I'm very excited to hear all of these readers together. Thank you so much for being here. Um, I'm going to keep my chatter, my intros to a minimum tonight. But suffice it to say that among our six readers tonight, some I know only through their beautiful writing, which I have read. Some I've had the privilege of also having met briefly in person. And our first reader, Dustin, is someone I have known for years, who I call a friend, and we have never yet made it happen where we meet in real life. Hopefully that will happen in March at AWP. Um, but regardless of my personal relationship with them, I do have a relationship with all of their writing. They've all moved me, made me laugh, made me think about things in a way that I hadn't thought about them before, taught me things about form, about language. And I hope that tonight, while you're hearing them, maybe you'll think the same way. And please, to support these writers, buy their books. If you already own their books, leave them reviews where it matters. And if you miss something in the chat tonight, you can always Google, and find them online that way. So with no further ado, we are going to begin with our first reader tonight, and that's Dustin Brookshire.
Thank you so much, Donna, for creating this space and all that you do for writers. And I'm excited and looking forward to hearing Erin, Catherine, Rebecca, Jennifer, and the other Donna tonight. Before I launch into my reading, I just want to say two things. If you're a member of the LGBTQI plus community, I hope that you will check out the Maureen Seton Poetry Prize, which is sponsored by South Florida Poetry Journal and the Wild and Precious Life series. It is a free contest with a $500 prize that honors Maureen Seton. If you're not part of the queer community like me, then I bet you know someone that is. So please share that information with them. And then the second thing I want to say is our host with the mostest, Donna Voyer, has a new book out. So you should go to Sundress Publications and purchase her book, Unrivered. So I'm going to read a couple poems from my chapbook, repeat as needed. The only thing that you really need to know about the chapbook is every poem is inspired by a clap back or mimicking another poem throughout the collection. And I will open and close with the poem from Repeat as Needed. This poem is inspired by Denise Duhamel's poem, Nature. Middle school science class. Mrs. Smizer explained the life cycle of stars. Our sun, a yellow dwarf, will become a red giant. Flames will consume Mercury and Venus like appetizers before reaching Earth. My ears ignored the 5 billion year timeline. I exclaimed, "We're all going to burn to death." Mrs. Smizer laughed. "I don't plan on being around." Giggles wafted through the air. A few students looked as horrified as me. Maybe they too were Southern Baptists raised on fearing a city of flames. I knew God would use the sun for the final destruction. The red giant loomed, my face red from its heat. I love writing collaborative villanelles. I love villanelles in general. And this is a collaboration I wrote with the poets Allison Blevins and Christiane Weeks Rogers, and Christiane's here tonight. It's villanelle for people attracted to men. I'd make a list of men I hate, but it'd be too long. I'd throw rice above my own head, watch and listen for a message in the grain drop song, recall the times I thought I was in love but was wrong. Instead, I green and coal my eyes, awash. New sights reveal that the list of men I hate is long. I dumped a guy once, caught him sniffing my thong. I carve out my lungs with my fingers, notch knife scratch tallies across my dresser, a dedicated song. I'll sing until I pull out a lighter to fire up the old bong. I'll remember cigarettes fondly, smoke and scotch. I'd name my vices after men, but the list is too long. To love men, hell, to love it all, you gotta be strong. I fucking love myself, wild and debauched. I don't need to listen for a message in the grain drop song. I won't tolerate men telling me my happiness is wrong. I stand in the sheeting rain, perfect, not blotched, celebrating what I love about myself, a list never too long. I can find happiness, my groove, in any goddamn song. Sizzling villanelle. It's easy enough to devise the plan. A compliment followed by another. I knew I'd have an affair with this married man. A doctor with a wife, kids, a Labrador, and a minivan. He's bisexual and always horny, eager to screw. Usually, it's easy enough for him to plan, whether the wife's on a girls' trip or during the span of time she's at the salon for a blowout. Yes, it's true. I've been hard up for an affair with a married man. Sex delicious as a steak out of a sizzling pan is what I need. No want, no desire. You see, it's easy enough to devise a plan. When men are so damn predictable, you can lead a man by his dick when his balls are blue. You'll end up in bed with a married man or in a parking lot giving a hand job in a sedan. Is this villanelle rooted in lies or is it true? You should know lying can be part of the plan, but maybe I will have an affair with a married man. And then I'm going to close with again, poem from Repeat as Needed. This one is inspired by Megan Fernandez's poem, White People Always Want to Tell Me They Grew Up Poor. It's a fucking amazing poem. You can listen to her, read it online, but you should also buy her book, Good Boys. She has a couple books out, but I really, really love Good Boys. My poem is Straight People. Straight people don't like to be corrected. Sexual orientation, not sexual preference. Straight people love to message us on Facebook 10 to 15 years after graduation to say, it's okay that you're gay, or I'm proud of you, or yes, queen, or look at you, you go, girl. Straight people love to ask with a Leslie Stahl stare, which one of you is the woman? When we respond, we're both guys, they insist, but which one of you, you know, does the woman stuff? Straight people love to tell us, I have a gay friend. Then they ask, do you know him? And we have to say a prayer to Dolly Parton so we don't respond. Yes, our homo registry is updated each night and downloads while we sleep. We are Borg. And they love to close the conversation with, y'all should meet. Heterosexual dramatic pause. You'd be so cute together. Trans and bi people never say these things to us. They too deal with heterosexual commentary. Bi people are often teased, you can't make up your mind, or at least your dating odds increase by 50%, or why do you have to be so greedy? Straight people will tell trans people remembering pronouns is hard, forgetting dead names is difficult, but they will give an oral report on all 8 seasons of Game of Thrones without forgetting or mispronouncing a goddamn name. Straight people will ask trans people, did you have the surgery? Then point. Straight people will say they love us and vote for politicians to strip us of our rights. Oh, straight people, straight people, straight people. Thank you so much.
Amazing. I don't know if my favorite part of that last poem is the Borg part or the Game of Thrones part. They're both so perfect. Um, Thank you so much for that, Dustin. And please get Dustin's books. They're wonderful, and he has a full-length collection debuting next year, I believe. So watch for that as well. Our next reader, I got to know because her book is out on one of my favorite presses, Autofocus Books. Um, and I am really excited to hear her read from it. Our next reader is Erin Dorney. Erin, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Donna. Wow, Dustin, that was great. Can't believe I have to follow you. Um, but thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here as a COVID conscious writer. Virtual readings are like very important to me. So thank you for doing the work in putting this together. I'm going to read a couple of poems from my book. It came out in March from Autofocus. It's called Yes, I'm Human. I Know You Were Wondering. And this collection is epistolary poems and collages. So there's 30 collages and 30 poems. And they're all letters to Yoga with Adriene. So if you've ever watched a Yoga with Adriene YouTube video, that's who I'm addressing in this book. And you might recognize some language that's been borrowed from her videos as well. So day one, dear Adriene, when you said ground down, I thought you said brown down, like beef, because just before that, you mentioned the nutrients of your practice. Each day I do practice, drop another effervescent tablet in the jam jar on the sink. I watch a mother watch her daughter, reading about her hair, and consider all the other moms I'm missing. Outside, babies grow, and I facilitate it from the concrete patio. I can't decide which body part to use as the thread that stitches me through time and space. What have you got for that? Just begin to arrive. Why do I feel proud standing beneath a tall chestnut tree when I've stood under so many before without feeling any pride at all? Tissue on a black shirt through the wash. One day we will all be it. I could be holding handfuls of you now. Day two, dear Adriene. When I was home, I thought about what you'd said. Fold in towards it. Some unabashed pride, some handsome lawn. Like how weeds are simply plants in the wrong place. Summer's drying out, just flit and rot like bachelor's buttons. Feather few for migraines. What does your heart say? What do you want to return to? I fell right down in the yard, foot in a hole, and spotted someone through the fence. Have you seen a bird that's half red and half white underneath? Because I have. The breath always comes first, except when it doesn't. Day three, dear Adriene. I'll tell you a secret. Water brings me things. Did you know that glass can take 100 years to weather? Each wave a rock, pebble tumbled soft, fossil at my feet. You say claw through the hands, so I do. Each morning, desperate to see if a piece of the moon has finally come. When it rains, the garden garbage rises undead. Rusted nails, broken bulbs, a button, 1 cent. They reverse sift themselves into my palms. Fingertips kiss the earth as I drag trash away from whatever good is growing. Lately, I've licked so many things off leaves, a globe of pollen, a bead of wetness in which I saw the world. Make a choice. So there's 30 poems because they're Yoga with Adriene. They used to do this 30-day yoga challenge every winter. She just recently stopped doing it, but that's why they're day one, day two, day three. It's 30 days cycle. So I'm just going to read two more. I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit to day 16 now. Day 16, dear Adrian. For 16 days, I watch you watch me, but you never see me in the basement next to the dog puke stain, outside the laundry room, the attic. Sometimes there is no sun and I lie down on a bed of dirt. We're almost done. Where will you go when this is all over? To the next room for a sandwich? To stand barefoot in front of the fridge? This is where we're going to end it today. I saw the reflection of studio lights in the window behind your body, warped like cardboard left out in the rain. They say I could pay money to be in the same room as you. I'd rather sink my forehead to the ground, breathe you into the soft coiled curve of each foot. And then I'm going to end with day 21. I'll just show like one of the collages that's paired with this poem. It's one of my favorites. It says, "Step into the cursed corner." So, day 21, dear Adrian, teach me how to talk to invisible things, how to measure shoreline length, focus on a steady state. How can some things twist in my mind like morning glories? I think I am invasive. I keep saying no, but you grow into all my empty spaces. Dear ones, how you multiply. And that's all for tonight. I really appreciate you all being here and giving me a chance to read from my new book, and eager to hear the next readers.
Thank you so much. I love hearing you read those. I was a big Adrian fan for a long time, especially during lockdown. She was very human and very comforting. And your collages are gorgeous. The book is absolutely stunning. Get yourself a copy from Autofocus for sure. Okay, our next reader is Catherine Kirkpatrick. Catherine, it's all yours.
Thank you. As you said, what wonderful, vibrant, you know, different from each other kinds of poems. I think mine will be different again. That's fun. I'm reading from a poem collection called Creature, and it's divided into 3 sections. And the first section is called Creatures, and it's encounters with other animals that I live with: crows, wrens, cows, squirrels, turkeys, deer. I can add to that list. And then Created, which is a section about that addresses human vulnerabilities and creatureliness in the midst of aging, illness, and trauma, including the physical violences of war. But I thought that I would take a cue from this New Yorker cover. I don't know if you all saw it lately. The when I first saw it, I thought, oh my gosh, for our times, really? Is that the cover? And then I thought, yes, of course, is exactly the cover. So the dogs have been saving me, that's for sure. And so the last section is called Canines, and I thought I would read from that section tonight. This is a sonnet, so another exploration in form, and it's called I Might Obey. I think everything, there is a weed eater embedded in the sonnet that you'll see. Reasons they have, my dogs of the Shetland Islands, who bark at any man or woman, come to that, with a tool. Weed by hand, and they sit calm on the rain-doused drive like lions who will not roar. But haul out that crazy thing with a string, that rigid arm that gulps gasoline, and they whirl and yelp. 19th century jeans at loose ends without sheep? Or my dogs mean far more. Further back, fundamentally revising the ancient contract. Allied you are with tool makers, I say, but they bound and bark as if it's not them, but me needing correction, the golden rule applied, some curb through the whirring woof I might obey. So a number of these poems are about kind of mutual domestication, and they're also and this one is that it's at the beginning of the dog section, and I have two along that line, and I'm going to read the first one and then the following one where the narrator maybe has learned something. Early light and his bark is crescendo and flourish are running up and down the scales I've rarely heard from him. Rushed out of sleep, I know enough not to shush. Instead, I am up, yesterday's shirt over my head, and we are 30,000 years into this, one urgency matching another, his nose, my sight, his whiff of not quite right. There in the dead leaves beside the trash can's green husk is the other animal, raccoon on its back, convulsions. Rabies, distemper, he'd hurl himself into this ring of infection, nose right up to death. I hold his squirming, muscular anger. Where does he end and I begin? His vaccinations, my hesitations. And I cannot help this other who has lived its whole life without me, swaying now, vulnerable as a drunk, tiny paws on the glass. My other sharp bark shore the boundaries. We are darned domestication, mesh-bodied behind the built. Foolish apart, but wise together. We wait for the neighbor with the gun. And this next one is also about domestication. Um, another dog, but another dog teaching me. Pandemic puppy. 1. She's been chewing a face mask, stretched out her full 7-month length on the rug, moving on to those rug tassels now that she has the mask soggy and torn, standard surgical, ordinary to her as the rest of our silent home, our presence so constant she's miffed if we leave for a moment and takes off down the road we've just returned. 2. She arrived days before lockdown as fear raised all our hackles. 8 weeks old when we met and never a world without virus. Human fear, it's what she breathes. 3. She's not right, the trainer said. As if anyone knows what's right just now. Come, sit, stay. 4. Every human she's ever properly met, she remembers. With the herding dog's discrimination, each is sorted and known. Otherwise, you're a stranger. 5. Born into the midst of lives leaving, liminal dog, leap of faith dog, asking me, asking her, how do we leave this stillness, step out new and strong after so much strangeness and loss? How do we, asking her, asking me, eye contact our language, checking in before checking it out, ears alert, deciding. 6. Now we make each day between us conversation, negotiation, birthright of 2 daily walks on the ridge. She is everything I don't expect. When she finds a weak fawn, she ignores my commands, drop it, and races down the ridge with her careful cargo to the porch, leaving the fawn unharmed. I teach her, teaching me what she knows, what I don't. And then the last poem closes this section. Especially. How I love when I turn and she's gone. Dog of my heart, among the ones I've loved especially hard, especially much. She's gone to her bed upstairs, Afternoon nap time, not hovering, though she's shy, wary of strangers especially, but still she stands in her ginger coat, on her own white-socked feet, and takes herself from my side to sleep in her comfortable place on her comfortable chaise. I work in my office below, especially glad for that strong sense of herself, that bobtail of sureness, just as I love how much she loves others, brindled Grace and merled Coco, and yes, other humans in her life too, the few others into whose arms she flows, mistress of the dignified wiggle. Because as the priest said, everyone will let you down one time or another. And this many years in, I find it to be true. So she needs that sureness, that sense of standing on her own 4 feet, the heart capacious for many, that flow to the one and then the other. Whoever is paying attention today to what's happening in her world can be the allies she needs. Some days it might not be me. Thank you.
So wonderful. Thank you so much. I love hearing that part of the book, particularly because I don't think I've seen as many of those poems online as I have some from earlier in the book. And dogs are very important in my life as well. Really lovely. I just wrote in the chat, just, in case anybody missed it, that I would like the Mistress of Dignified Wiggle to be my new nickname. So, let's, like we can get that started. That'd be great. Thank you so much, Catherine. Again, her book is Creature. Get your hands on a copy, you won't be sorry. And I also love our readers tonight are wonderful because there are 6 of them and every single one of them is just nailing their 10 minutes. And as a curator and a host, like you guys are on top of your game and it's amazing. Our next reader is Rebecca Lehmann. Rebecca, it's all yours.
Thanks, Donna. Thanks for having me, and thanks to everybody else for reading. It's just so lovely to be listening to poems tonight. So I'm going to read some poems from my book, The Sweating Sickness, which was published in February from University of Pittsburgh Press. I'm going to start off with 2 poems. One is the first poem in the book, and one is the first poem in the second section of the book. And throughout the book, there are a series of poems that I wrote as contrapuntals, which is like where you have a column and then a second column, and you can read down each column or across. But I split them up in the book, so they are located separately, but there's a key at the back, so you could put them together. So these 2 go together. The first poem is called A Dozen Suns. Say you have a dozen suns. In the nocturnal forest, a dozen animals sniff a dozen lilies hammered shut for the night like flat little bells, like smells to go in perfume bottles. There is no moral to this story. When a dozen boys run through the night trees, they disappear between branches. One of the boys is mine. One of the boys is yours. A brook crooks its way through the dead trees, slicked with moss and fungi, pointing its finger to the east where the sun will rise, a loose head on a string or on a pike. One boy holds a puppet and one boy holds another boy's hand. Why are my hands so sweaty? Asks a third boy. 4 boys hold down the corners of the forest, which they snap like a sheet, sending pine cones into the air like hailstones. One hides in a hollow log, one hides in a small cave, and the 12th boy turns into a lily, turns into an animal, turns into a dozen pine trees, turns and vanishes in the night, ringed with a dozen stars that are not stars, that are loose sparks. Wouldn't you like to hold them, these twilight suns collecting in the forest? So this is the partner poem to that poem, and it's called A Dozen Daughters. In the morning, in the twilight, say you have a dozen daughters, with full skirts sewn from pine needles, flattened galaxies, and fox musk, little mushrooms stuffed in their pockets to drop into a dozen creeks. Did I say creek? I meant brook, which is more poetical. The daughters stand in the brook, cold feet gripping at the mossy stones. One of the daughters is mine. One of the daughters is yours. One of the dozen brooks is full of minnows and crayfish. The brook slashes the forest. Four girls squat at its bank, lifting rocks to send the crayfish scuttling to catch the crustaceans in open hands. One girl pulls a pincer off and waves it in the midst of all these trees like a flag of victory. One girl wanders from deeper in the forest. She looks down the galaxy line of the trees and wonders about the branches assembling like shaggy ghosts, like a dozen daughters flying through the trees, like bad intentions. I know you want the daughters to add up to 12, but they won't. One turns into a hollow log. One turns into a small cave. One turns into a blinking satellite bobbing across the sky. That leaves five daughters, scattered like ashes, like embers in the dead brush. Wouldn't you like to stamp them out? These mourning daughters waiting to ignite. So, I wrote most of this book during the COVID pandemic, and the book is titled The Sweating Sickness, which was the name of a plague that swept through England and northern France in the 16th century. And it was like a very fast illness that would either you would get over or it would kill you in like 24 hours. So the saying about it at the time was you could have breakfast at your own table, but dinner with God because it would kill people that fast. And you could get it more than once. And as I was writing this book of poems and the pandemic was going on around us, that seemed like kind of like a resonant symbol. And I was also doing a lot of research at the time for a novel that I was writing about Anne Boleyn. So she pops up in this poem, which is called The Sweating Sickness. It's the title poem of the book. And there's a lot of pandemic action going on and also some references to Anne Boleyn, who came down with the sweating sickness during this time, during the 16th century. The sweating sickness. And so the leaf of morning pressed between the window and the screen, the wild leaf of autumn, as autumn itself, pressed between panting summer and wet-faced winter, whose mascara runs in rivulets down wind-pinked cheeks. And the lore of a bewitched day, bewildered as some lady, maiden, peasant, throat-slit, tied to a pyre and crackling. The sun rose, slit-throated, I once mistranslated from French, when really it was the sun rose over the trenches. Where is the rosy-fingered sun? Busy with Odysseus, busy in antiquity, on an aged vase. Imagine Calais sweating out a summer fever, the sweating sickness. Imagine Anne Boleyn sweating in a country palace, bodice loosed, her virginity moldering away as she waits and sweats and waits and fevers, plague banner hung above the fine wooden door, to warn off, to ward off. Hang a banner above your door, hang a flag, hang a sign, as in the old days when illness was communal, when illness was realized as communal. I'm sorry my project is late, writes my student. COVID has hit my house. Outside, the wind hits the window, hits the brick facing of the wall, hits the plain wooden bannerless door. I hung no banner when I coughed through the night, when I fevered, when my lungs inflamed and pussed, when I checked and checked and checked the pulse oximeter and watched my oxygen levels waver, waver. I'm no werewolf, and if I was, I'd work to hunt the devil, to chase him weaving through the street lamps planted along the river trail. I'd bite his tail and wail. No, I'm no wolf, no witch, no lady waiting, one hand on enchanted wood. And if you place a witch bottle above a fire until it bursts, I will not howl and burn as I burned. I will not splinter into 1,000 shards of glass and rusted metal as a hex whispered in the night, as a protective object buried upside down before a threshold. Inside, a woman lies gasping, cold fingered and splintered with fever. So, the book has a number of villanelles in it. I'm just going to read one. There is a theme of COVID running through the book, and then there's also kind of a second story being told, which is the unfortunate death by suicide of my abusive ex during the middle of the pandemic. He was kind of a difficult person, and we had a very complicated relationship. And it was a long time ago, but it was still very jarring for him to end up that way. So this is a poem. It's a villanelle, and it's kind of just sort of like looking at that with a distance. I found the villanelle was a really helpful form to use to write about grief because it circles and circles and then kind of changes a little with each iteration. Um, Unmoored villanelle. I'll tell you, I was not unmoored. I lived. I left the house, and though I moved back in, I didn't stay. I married. I had kids. I got diplomas, 3 of them, undid his bankrupt stare. I loved, no sin. I'll tell you, I was not unmoored. I lived with joy, planted a garden, wrote books. The lid of time, of sky, of day, of night, unskins my staid thoughts. I didn't stay. We were just kids. I cannot say I didn't sway or never slid. I did, like a child's greasy hand, like twins who stare unmoored across the sky. I lived, not thinking of him much until I did, until he roped time in a noose and Finn. He didn't stay, unmarried from the sky, a kid. In the yard, night blossoms grew, and when I plucked one, it was his crooked grin. I'll tell you, I was not unmoored. I lived. I didn't stay. I married. I had kids. So there are also, I'm just going to read 2 more poems. There are also some poems in the book about my life now, where I have 2 kids. And this is a poem about um, a time a couple of years ago when my son was sick and had pneumonia. And I was up in the night checking on him and very worried about him. And he ended up being totally fine, like thank God for antibiotics. But um, this is just kind of like thinking about that worried space of parenting. The Red Planet. The child dreams a door in the distance. The distance is a Metroplex theater, each screen playing a different film. No, the distance is a hand with brittle fingernails, one chipped. No, the distance is a planet. There, on the planet, a door, a portal. The planet is the child's round head, collapsed on a pillow. In his sick bed, the child pants and moans, asleep but still suffering, fever spiked, and a metal bowl set by his bedside in case he vomits. Wouldn't that child like to go through the door on the faraway planet? With his pale hand, he might open it to find an elephant, a whole herd of elephants, stomping through the red dust that is characteristic of the planet, for which the planet is known, stirring it up in big, blood-colored dust clouds. Or he might find a theater, totally empty, no one in masks, playing his favorite superhero movie, the one where the hero saves the red planet from a black hole hurtling through the multiverse. He might find a poem written by his mother, left on his pillow. The poem is a limerick about the child's dog attending a birthday party filled with red balloons, red as the child's cheeks, hot with fever. The child tucks into a curled ball in bed, like an alien on that other planet might curl its armored back to form a protective spiral shell, spiraled like the dreams of the child, which corkscrew around the red planet, spiraled like the world beats of my heart as I watch over him, check his chest for steady breaths, spiraled like the curled arms of a wide galaxy galloping across space, cradling the dusty red planet, cradling our own in its proton heavy arms, in its star hot arms, in its comet pocked arms, cradling the sick and dreaming child. So I'm going to finish with a poem about Anne Boleyn. I wrote a novel about Anne Boleyn. It's coming out in March. It's called The Beheading Game. The premise is, what if she woke up after her execution, sewed her head back on, and tried to kill Henry VIII? This poem is written from her perspective, and it takes place like right before her execution. And I could not get over the fact that when she was executed, her daughter was like 2.5 years old, and how heartbreaking it must have been for her to leave her behind. So she's thinking about that in this poem. And this is the last poem in the book, Flowers with Anne Boleyn. I saw the days and then the hours, sprouting like wheeled hallucinations off the tidal river that cut the dirty city through its core. Even the river swans flew away, angry and hissing, heads barely attached. In memory, I saw my daughter, counting her toes in French and Latin, the blue veins on her feet showing, blood ghosts through her skin. I saw her leaving as time leaves, ticking and scattering little finger bones, moss and lichen, small maggots that chew the walnut's green skin, the earthy cushion that hides its hard nut. If a rift in the earth should happen, if thunder rolls around the throne, if the blood of the day washes out of the courtyard and drains into the river, the same river that splits this bad tooth city. These blossoms, I don't know 'em, dangling flirtatiously, not like open mouths, I guess, more like upside down jester hats, spangled with virtuous wool balls, ready to amuse or be cast off, just as ready to give pleasure for one day only. In my head, in my memory, I can see the glassless window. It is really just a hole through a wall to the outside air, rotten and brisk, straw filled. Barefoot, the shoeless executioner danced, did reckon, did reap, did unhead the air tight around my neck. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Gorgeous. Again, highly recommend The Sweating Sickness. It's a book I've reread a few times. A use of the form, villanelle, pantoum, the repetition that you're hearing in these poems is really, really interesting. And as you could hear, adds up to a beautiful effect. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for being here. All right, our next reader is, I had the pleasure of meeting Rebecca at the New Orleans Poetry Festival in April. I kind of stalked waiting for her to come out of the bathroom so she would sign my book. And then I had the pleasure of meeting our next reader there as well. And so I'm going to turn it over to her. This is Jennifer Saunders.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for hanging in there towards the end. And thank you so much to Donna for running this reading series. As an English language poet in a non-English language country, online reading series are kind of my lifeline. So thank you for the series, for the invitation, and thank you to all the readers. I'm going to be reading poems from my collection, Tumor Moon. And I just want to give people a little heads up. These poems revolve around my son's diagnosis with a rare type of tumor. He's fine, amazingly enough. He's fine, but it is a diagnosis with a rare form of tumor. So listen with care, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Timeline memory. Recently, my date book told me a story different from the one I've been telling myself about my son's diagnosis. We careen in memory from one appointment to the next. Pediatrician, ultrasound, MRI, biopsy, in the wingspan of a week. But when I reconstruct the timeline, gaps open like tunnels. 7 days from ultrasound to MRI. Blank calendar blocks before the regional hospital refers us to the university hospital, waiting for biopsy results. Time bends. I misremember. Like when my hometown Sledding Hill, where my brother and I spent our childhoods, surprised me on a recent visit with how small it really is. I remember skidding constantly out of control, sled lurching as we sped down winding tracks that tunneled through the bushes. Turns out, it's a tiny little hill. Still, what I remember of those days, of those appointments, is closing my eyes, ducking my head into my shoulders, hoping the branches only graze me as I fly past. The call. You know, now that everybody has cell phones and you can get phone calls anywhere, they always seem to come at the absolute worst possible time. I'm sure everybody's experienced that, and that's what this is about. Such phone calls always catch you wrong-footed. You're on the treadmill at the gym, sweat slicking your palms. Or you're at a poetry reading when it vibrates its insistence. Mid-match at the rink. Never at home, never alone in a room with a door you can close. So you arrange your face when the doctor's number lights up your home screen. Raise a finger to signal, I have to take this. You seek out a corner, scrim of privacy, press the phone to your ear. You catch the words, biopsy results. Catch, very rare. You hear the doctor tell you not to Google anything before your appointment tomorrow. This next poem is a sectioned poem, and I want to point out the language in section 4 is all taken from a medical paper, the histology of desmoid tumor fibrosis. And my son plays hockey, he plays ice hockey, and there's a reference to blocking shots, and that's what that is. And that's a thing that you do in hockey, and even with equipment, it can hurt. Welcome to Desmoidia. 1. Desmoid, from the ancient Greek, desmos. A band, a bond, imprisonment or ligament, an infirmity, appearing 20 times in the New Testament. Mark used it to describe a speech impediment, Luke to describe a maimed woman, possibly wreath or fetter, also spell or charm, mooring cable, door latch, yoke strap. Modern usage, relationship, connection. Medical, tumor that develops in the fibrous tissue of ligament and tendon. 2, may also be called aggressive fibromatosis, musculoaponeurotic fibromatosis, familial infiltrative fibromatosis, desmoid fibromatosis, deep fibromatosis, hereditary desmoid disease. 3, theories of formation. Mostly sporadic, mostly of unknown origin. One theory, desmoids are healing, run amok. Fibroblasts that won't stop growing. Scar tissue, transforming recovery to damage like wine reverting to water. A missed signal, beta-catenine cataracting through the body in a profusion of production. So I say injury, blocked shot, why not? My son turning his body into the path of the puck. Let's say he was up by 1 in the 3rd. Let's say time was running down. Let's say he held his ground. 4, histology. The tumor appears striking, a poorly circumscribed proliferation of cells, pink and plump, darkly staining the final figure. 5, standard of care, watchful waiting. They used to resect desmoids, excise from the body the foreign body. I wanted that, for someone to take a knife to my son, out with that dark moon orbiting the future. These days, it's watchful waiting, data collection to monitor the new object in the body's sky, its uncertain trajectory. This next poem also has borrowed language, but from a completely different source. It's from the Tarot Dictionary and Compendium. I'm not very good at it, but I do like to throw down a tarot card once in a while. A mother's tarot for my son. The death card paired with the moon is just another way of saying watch and wait, just another MRI on the calendar. Death doesn't actually portend death, but transformation, the end of a phase. We're cycling through the options, eyeing the black new moon on your ultrasound, bright mooned tumor on your MRI. Did I ever tell you you were born under a lucky star? I knew from the start you were a freshly minted coin. 4 of Pentacles, merciful earth, and listen. You are within the walls of a strong castle. I'll weave you a net with these knots, not malignant, not metastasizing, not the tower, not today. Shuffle through the leaves on your way home from school. There's leftover Halloween candy and a flame still burns in the pumpkin you carved by slicing away what didn't serve your purpose, cutting out everything that blocked your light. And we seem to be on a form roll today. I'm closing with an abecedarian, which is it's a 26-line poem. For if people don't know, each line of the poem is the line of the alphabet. So if you look down the left-hand side of the page, you can see the alphabet running from the first line to the last. And I kind of like listening to an abecedarian. On the page, it's really obvious. You can look and you can see, and you kind of peek ahead and like, how are they going to solve for X? What are they going to do about that one? And I like listening to an abecedarian and trying to figure out, where the lines are and, what are they going to do about Q? So I'll close with, and also, I'm not sure if we're allowed to have favorite poems. Like, are we allowed to have favorite children? But spoiler, this might be my favorite poem from this collection. So I'm closing with that one. Desmoid tumor abecedarian with honey and flowers for my son. Active surveillance, watch and wait. Between locally aggressive and indolent comes tyrosine kinase inhibitors, comes data collection, comes calculating the odds of event-free survival, comes nausea, comes fatigue, comes throwing up in the bushes and going to practice anyway, comes still playing hockey when even short shifts are too long. Honey, tell the coach when it's not going well. It's okay to rest, honey. Invasive, just another word for pushy. Just another word for back to the tyrosine kinase inhibitors when the tumor looms again like a full flower moon on your latest MRI. April, and the cherry tree is in blossom, narcissus littering the yard. April, and our grape hyacinth is taking over, proliferating and profligate like the not quiescent cells swelling your calf. Regression is the goal, but I'll settle for stasis. What I want to tell you is that life was always unpredictable. It's just more obvious now. Variable clinical course, just another way of saying we'll figure it out as we go. There's no X marks the spot, no calendars circled end date. But yesterday, it didn't frost overnight. Come May, we can set zinnias. What I want to tell you, honey, is something is always blooming. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. What a gorgeous, gorgeous book. I didn't write it down, but there's this from reading the book that line, I want someone to take a knife to my son, just like every time I read it, and now hearing you read it. Oh, just beautiful. The whole thing, beautiful. Thank you so much. And we have one more reader this evening. Actually one of only a handful of other Donnas I have ever met in my life. And so I am very happy to welcome Donna Spruijt-Metz.
Thank you so much. I'm reading from my new book, To Phrase a Prayer for Peace, that came out from Wild House Press in March, one of the M months. This book is, I started it on the first day of the Israel-Hamas war, Middle East war now. And it was just going to be one poem, and I couldn't stop. So I ended up writing a poem a day. They're not all in here. For 115 days until I was really writing nonsense by the time I felt so limited by the media and all. So this is kind of, I'm just going to read a few in order, and then you see what happens to this woman during that war. One thing that you need to know is that there's an R in this book that comes back again and again, and he is a blind poet friend of mine. So this is day one. Darkness myth for day one of the Israel-Hamas war, before I heard the news. for R. I'm a night rider, and no matter how hard I try to bend myself into daylight, I long for the dark. But what do I know of darkness? My version of darkness is full of candlelight. This one is day 4. What you need to know is that there's a line from my favorite Brazilian poet, Adélia Prado, and I'll do this when we get to that line. Day 4 of the war. Hashtag we are toast. Day 11. It's 7:57 p.m. PST, October 10th, 2023, and I have lived through this day. I weep from room to room. It's taught that prayers said in community are multicolored, while individual prayers are monochrome. We tinker. We are haphazard technicians. God is what we need, and fast. All God's welcome. On day 25, I'm losing my grip. I say something unkind to a stranger, and what good does that do? I just hurt my own soul with this anger. It bounces, ricochets, is impotent. Buber praises those who can dwell in the kingdom of holy uncertainty, rather like Keats's negative capability, or at least akin to it. My dear friend R, I have nothing tonight, just words, thoughts, fears. A poet asks, do you think the seas are angry or is it the fish? Everything is wrong with that question. We humans destroy everything we touch, and we touch everything, sticky-fingered and greedy. By day 31, I really wanted to stop writing these poems, but I couldn't make myself do it. So this is day 31, speak. And now can I stop with this? Even though breath has become a privilege, in the margins of my innocence, I scribble, let there be peace. No stopping it, girl, old girl, woman, cowering, speak. You only have everything to lose. Day 56, I wake from a dream where I am being stifled by mimeographs and carbon copies like the ones from my mother's typewriter. Copies of changed passwords, closed bank accounts, facts, she thought. But in fact, they were slippery and intangible, yet set in ink, which makes them seem true, just like the news. I wake up, the nightmare of war has resumed. Of favorite poems, this one is my favorite poem in the book. It goes real fast, so don't blink. Day 75, I step away to lick wounds. If a poem is a tattoo, I'm inked and scarred by these words. So by day 82 in the war, friends weren't talking to one another anymore. Everybody had an opinion. People couldn't talk. The news said all different things. And we had friends coming over from the Netherlands, and we thought, well, yay, well, these are our dear friends. We can talk. No. Day 82, I want. I am spending money at our overstocked market, making a grand dinner for our guests. And yet, we can't talk about the war. Israeli soldiers dying because never again, and they aren't wrong, but Gazans starving, needing the basics of life, like water. I need a poem driven by the unbearable dailiness of this time. And why can't I just ask, what do you mean? Instead of wedging my own hot and sticky and urgent opinion into it. Why can't you? I'm just going to read 2 more because there are a lot of us. I'm going to read the title poem to the collection. And what I have to say about this one is I work a lot with Psalms, with writing to the Psalms. And for some reason, most of those didn't make the cuts tonight, but I'm going to read two now. And when I talk about you in these poems, I'm talking about you, whatever you think of as holy, nature, the Shekhinah, um, God. And I use capital Y, capital O-U, so you see it on the page, and it becomes really a direct and urgent address, which is what I was trying to do. The other thing I want to say about this poem is that Torah and Psalms and the New Testament all teach about the importance of words. That sometimes that can make prayer really terrifying in the words that you choose. So, day 118, the proper way to phrase a prayer for peace, after Psalm 118. What if I ask for the wrong thing? My words are imprecise, and you tend towards the literal. I'm listening to the noise that the hours make, waiting for my heart to soften, waiting for the ribbons that bind me to loosen. And then I might know what to ask and how to ask for it. Last poem for the evening is after Psalm 119, verses 1 and 2. And this one's called Swarm. My heart risks it all, says generous, but my mind is wily, unkind. These war days drag me down. Seaweed in precarious seas, disoriented, the sea's floor lost to me for holdfast. No latch and tug. Can't drag myself up to the shoreline, salty and dripping, and sure that this time I've found your way, as if it were up for interpretation. But I do, I interpret furiously. And now, scraping down through the fury, cruelty, at the bottom of it all, at the lowest point, my ears hear your whisper. The whole heart will find me. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. What a beautiful way to end our reading this evening. I was just so struck by uh you're all different, but the way you all tonight used the world of language and the form of language and the etymology of words to make sense of your worlds, right? Of what was happening in your worlds. Thank you so much to our small but appreciative audience for being here. We love you, right? There were lots of people signed up that didn't make it, but you did, and you're the best. There will be a recording. There is a recording of this that will be online on our YouTube channel shortly, probably tomorrow. If you know someone that meant to come and didn't make it, please make sure to invite them. And thank you so much for being here for our last reading of 2025. Our first reading of 2026, if you want to mark your calendar, will be January 8th. And we have another evening of 6 readers again. Subaga Crystal Bacon, Nathan Spoon Ow, Ignatius Valentine, David Saunders, Kathleen Flanagan, and Cindy Veach. So another really packed lineup for January. And then we're going to start paring back down a little bit. We had lots of folks that I promised spots to that I had to get in. So thank you so much for all of you for being here. I'm going to stop the recording and feel free to say hello, whatever, but I also want to respect everybody's time, and we're in all different time zones. So I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you were here, and hopefully we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you